Vino Geek Podcast, wine from a Kiwi perspective. The world of wine is supposed to be fun, exciting, enticing, interesting, and yet a lot of times it feels daunting and challenging and totally foreign. You know, not only Kiwi drinkers have this issue, but around the world people have this issue, maybe to a lesser extent, but we all have this issue. That's what we're talking about today. So recently I had, there was some women that came into Lionel's and got talking to them, and they were open to trying different things. So I gave them a taster of a couple of wines, and you know, one in particular was the Albarino we sell, which I profiled a few weeks back. And they're like, oh, never had an Albarino. They loved it, but they would never have brought it otherwise, And so it's just like, and that got me thinking. That was the catalyst. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be inviting and challenging and cool. We're supposed to enjoy exploring and things like this. The problem is that, why, when wine isn't cheap and we don't necessarily have a lot of spare cash just to throw around and experiment, and you don't want to buy a bottle of wine and you get home and you don't like it, so we tend to stick to our knitting. I mean, I do, as well. I stick to what I like, or stick to around what my wife likes. I do like to sort of, take punts here and there, because, you're looking for that value, you're looking for that wine that's just going to go, oh, wow, I've got something that really good and it didn't cost an arm and a leg. I'm always looking for that because that's so much fun. And as much as I love Kiwi wine and I love talking about Kiwi wine and promoting Kiwi wine, it tends to be wines from Europe that offer just that really good drinkability at that lesser level. And there's a number of factors for that. And it's not what you think. It's not because European wine is made more naturally, because that's a total fallacy and myth that it's been created for some reason in some strain, and they believe it's because of the additives in New Zealand wine. That's why they react to New Zealand wine more than European. But that's totally false. There's a whole lot of other factors. Sorry, I've just got something in my eye.
Thinking about Europe, Asia, or that once-in-a-lifetime adventure you've been dreaming about? Travel is happening right around the world, and now is a fantastic time to start planning. Picture yourself wandering through the streets of Paris, cruising the rivers of Europe, exploring the temples of Asia, or relaxing on a tropical beach in Bali. Whether you're looking to travel this year or take advantage of early bird specials for next year, Amanda and Anna from King Travel would love to help you bring those travel dreams to life. Book local, book with confidence. Visit kingtravel.co.nz.
And thanks for stopping the recording and starting again. You didn't have to see me fluffing around with my contact lens and trying to get whatever got behind it out, because it can be a nightmare at times. Anyway, where was I? So, we as Kiwis, and then I extend out to the rest of the world, is that you have, Kiwis are very Kiwi-centric. We stick to what works in New Zealand, as well as, obviously, Champagne and Shiraz. Californian Chardonnay gets a big run here as well. So, apart from Kiwi, those are the foreign wines that get a look in. We will look at, things like Côte de Rhône is quite popular, as well as Australian Cabernet and Californian Cabernet. But, we tend to like to stick to our knitting, where elsewhere you have your locals, local places, and then of the big hot spots, likes of Argentine Malbec, Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, Australian Shiraz, those, but you're more open to the old world as well with their styles and what they do. Anyway, so when it comes to that, there's, obviously the whole sticking to your knitting thing. You can stick to your knitting, but just know where other places produce that style of wine elsewhere. So you can go, oh, yeah, I love Central Otago Pinot Noir. Where do I go to next? Or I'm a big Kiwi Chardonnay drinker. What do I drink? What styles are out there that are similar or same but different? We have to be open and we have to be willing to try these things. And I'm happy to be your guide through this, and finding those different wines that do work and do hit the right notes, but also get to have fun as well, because, it doesn't also have to be super expensive to get something from overseas. As I said, I tend to buy a lot of European wines when I'm just wanting something a little bit more of value, that I'm looking for that gem that just stands out and just sort of, yeah, just impresses me, give me that good bang for buck type scenario. And yeah. So first off, we're going to look at the grape varieties that are common in New Zealand and where to go to from there. And then later on, we'll start talking about European styles and what they represent back here and or close to, and how to decipher the labels, which can be a minefield as well. So first off, Sauvignon Blanc. We have to start here. In Sauvignon Blanc, I mean, you're looking at obviously Sancerre and Fume from France. They're from the Loire Valley. That is the home. There is also Bordeaux Blanc. Now, the difference here is that Bordeaux Blanc tends to be a little bit cheaper. Sure, you have Semillon in the mix too, and maybe a tiny amount of Sauvignon Gris and potentially some Muscat, but they do have Sauvignon Blanc in it. They are fresher, drier styles. They can be oaked in some way, so that can throw it a little bit. Then there's also the Mediterranean whites, things like you have Vermentino, and then there's like sort of the styles like Picpoul and things like this, which if you shop for the south of France for whites, or from the islands, like Corsica and Sardinia and things like this, you will get wines of this nature and this style, fresh seafood, vibrant, punchy. Might not have that same ripeness of tropical fruits or what have you, and maybe not their herbaceousness, but it'll have that fresh zestiness, which tends to be what you're happy with, like generally speaking. If you're a Sauvignon Blanc drinker, you want that freshness as well. Albarino is obviously a massive one that is very, very similar and a really good alternative. Also, dry Riesling. So dry Riesling from like the Clare or Eden Valley in Australia is easy enough to find, and very much that dry, zesty, fresh mineral style of wine. Next, Chardonnay. Well, obviously, Burgundy is the home of Chardonnay. The problem is that, while you can get amazing wines, they come with a price tag, a hefty price tag. So in order to sort of find wines that are similar or, thereabouts, you kind of go to Australia or California. They are riper, hotter climate, Chardonnays from California. And Australia tends to lean on a leaner, fresher style of Sauvignon Blanc of Chardonnay. But they are sort of, if you like, value equivalents. There is Chardonnay from Italy that you can look at, but they tend to lean on the lighter, fresher style, as well as obviously Chablis, which is very much that mineral, fresher style also. But you can have some fun there. Another one to try is, you could try Chenin Blanc. However, with Chenin Blanc, especially from the Loire, avoid the demi-sec styles. If you find demi-sec, that means it's off-dry, it's sweeter, so you're not going to be a fan of it. So just avoid that and you'll be fine. In South African Chenin Blanc, you can find that and it's excellent, and it'll probably be, out of all the styles, probably closest to a Kiwi style Chardonnay, because there's a bit of oak, there's a bit of nuttiness around this, but it's fruity as well. Pinot Gris. Pinot Gris is something that Kiwis do enjoy and drink enough of it to really, you know, if you're looking for, the home is Alsace, and you can get reasonable priced Alsatian Pinot Gris. It's not too expensive, a little bit more than probably what you'd spend back here on Pinot Gris, but you can find it. Another thing to try is Riesling. Now, Germanic Riesling, sure, they do make Trocken or dry Riesling, but the most common that you see in New Zealand is the sweeter styles. And what they do is they pick it early. It is picked at different levels, but the most common that you'll find, the QBA level, is picked early, fermented to a reasonable sugar level, so you get that balance and that sweetness and that freshness at the same time. And it's very reminiscent of something that has a cult following, and it's made in this style. If you haven't tried Germanic Riesling, is the Manowar Exiled Pinot Gris, very much made in this style, where it's, they're trying to preserve the acidity and leave a whack of residual sugar and balance the two. And that's the secret of Riesling. So you can try that as an alternate style. There's things like Zabebo from Italy, that tends to, from the south of Italy and Sicily, that you can find a little bit of, that tends to leave a little bit of sweetness in there, just to also push that through and make it more palatable. Just generally speaking, something that people want to drink. You can go things like Pinot Grigio, which is different, but it is the same grape variety. Without going into all these different styles, and then the reds. You're looking at Merlot as Bordeaux. Merlot and Cabernet are both from Bordeaux. I have this little bugbear when I go to a restaurant and they separate Merlot and Cabernet. They are brother and sister. They belong together. It is a very new world thing the newer wine countries to separate Merlot and Cabernet. It's not a thing in Bordeaux. It might be now that they're trying to keep up with what the new world is doing, but at the end of the day, they blend them together, because in Bordeaux they believe that the wines are better blended together rather than separate. And so it is a bugbear of mine when I go to restaurants and they've broken those categories in two, and it's like, well, technically they should be together. Unless you have an extensive wine list where you've got truckloads of everything, so you can break it down to Merlot dominant, and Cabernet dominant. But for the most part, most Kiwi wine lists, they'll only have 2 to 4 of each of those of Merlot and Cabernet. So put them together. Don't be silly. Don't try to outthink the room. They are supposed to be married together. Anyway, that's my little rant. But yeah, Bordeaux is obviously the place to go for Merlot and Cabernet. If you like that riper style, Australia, California, that's sort of where you go. If you're looking for something Italian, Montepulciano or Chianti, as long as it's sort of one of the more, the cheaper Chianti is not going to give you that reward like you get from Cabernet. And if you do like that richer, riper style of Cabernet, move further south to Puglia, to Primitivo, or Negro Amaro will give you that same satisfaction. Syrah. Syrah obviously is Shiraz, but in the context of Kiwi Syrah, there's the Northern Rhône, and a lot of the Rhône wines tend to be sort of in between Australian Shiraz and Kiwi Syrah. They have more freshness and a liveliness on the finish, more of a lively finish than the Australian, but they tend to be riper and sweeter than Kiwi Syrah. So they sit in between. If you're looking at, In Spain, your Tempranillo, your Rioja, they at this when it's cheaper represents more like a Pinot, but then as you get more expensive, it gets more like a Syrah than a Shiraz. So that's a really good alternative option for Syrah. And then again, the south of Italy, I sort of talk about how in the north it's more the lighter reds, and then as you move through the country, the reds get heavier. So you could look at Sicilian, Nero d'Avola, and things like this. There is exceptions to that rule through Italy, but if you keep with that sort of rule of thumb, you're not going to go too far wrong. Um, you know, and saying that Pinot Noir obviously is from Burgundy, but again, like the Chardonnay, Burgundy is expensive. Red Burgundy is expensive to get something decent. Gamay from Beaujolais is slightly better, and as far as value goes, and gives you an opportunity to buy something that tastes like Pinot Noir but from France. And then obviously the wines from the reds from the north. Ignore Valpolicella Rapasso or Amarone, but sorry, I've just lost the name escapes me now. But then you go to the Piedmont area and you'll get Nebbiolo and Barbera, and they tend to look more like a Pinot Noir. Although this is a disclaimer I put on a lot of European wines, especially Italian and Spanish. When you buy more entry level, it tends to taste more like Pinot Noir, and then as you spend more, it tastes more like Syrah, Shiraz, and even Cabernet. So just bear that in mind. Again, I mentioned this: Spain, drink the cheaper Tempranillo that tends to look a little more like Pinot Noir than the more expensive stuff.
Just taking a quick pause in the episode to remind you to like, subscribe, comment, and come and follow me on socials too.
Okay, now the fun part. Deciphering the labels in Europe, and especially in France, where, and even Italy, they don't put the grape varieties to an extent. Sometimes in Spain, even, So how do you know? This is me covering over tracks again, and this just helped reinforce things. The Loire Valley, the villages of Sancerre and Pouilly Fume. And Pouilly Fume is spelled Pouilly, and Sancerre, it sounds very similar. It's spelled very similar. It's Sancerre. Now, these are the Sauvignon Blanc regions of France, and so that's what you're wanting to find if you're looking for Sauvignon Blanc. And key indicators, again, like Italy, the further north geographically a region is, the lighter the wines are going to tend to be. As you move further south, they get heavier. The exception is that the whites in the south of France, they're making them really light and fresh because they don't want to have something heavy when they're sitting on the Mediterranean and enjoying seafood or what have you. So they have light, fresh whites. But if you follow that rule of thumb, you're going to be roughly right, So yeah, up in the north, Loire has, fresh, zesty whites, mineral-driven whites, likes of Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin Blanc. Muscadet is another one, which is similar to those. So more floral and aromatic, but yes. The reds, Cabernet Franc is the big one there. They do have others, but Cabernet Franc, and it's light and fresh and aromatic. It's not like Cabernet Sauvignon at all. Then if you stay in the west, you move south, there's Bordeaux. Now, when you see a label from Bordeaux, this can be tricky. Different villages, and this is where a map comes in handy. If you can bring up a map on your phone when you're looking at Bordeaux, this really can help you. And traditionally, the places, the sub-regions on the left side of the river are Merlot, the right side is Cabernet. So if you stick to those, sorry, just made a mistake there. I'm going to leave this in because you need to see the warts and all. You don't want me to be editing it. It's the other way around. Left is Cabernet, right is Merlot. This shows how long it's been since I've even thought about European wines because I've been so focused on Kiwi. And, you know, that's what you're looking for. You can, sure, like, you know, if you like Merlot, you're going to enjoy Malbec. So you can find a good Malbec, and that's just further south in Cole. But no one really, you know, it's rare to find that style of wine. You know, the Rhône Valley, that's Syrah country, that's Grenache country. Now, if you like big Aussie Shirazes, then Côte de Rhône and the Southern Rhône, and again, get out your phone and look at the sub-regions, and you'll see things like Coroti and Croz's Hermitage and things like this. That is the north, that is Syrah, and further south, the Châteauneuf-du-Pape, the Vacheras, the Rusto, things like this, that is Grenache. And so while they blend varieties through that, that's a good rule of thumb. So obviously a little bit plumper, juicier, fruitier, darker from the south, because obviously you're moving south and they get super ripe, where the north tends to be more that still powerful, but a little bit lighter, not so dark, and really that Syrah essence there in the north. So just things to be aware of. Burgundy is a minefield, and you know you can spend years, and we will, you know, in a future episode break down these regions even further, sort of French wine, you know, 2.0 if you like. And the big thing here is that, you know, this Pinot Noir and Gamay, if you're looking at red, we'll stick with red for now, and Beaujolais is Gamay, and while it is lighter, it is really good value. Burgundy, you know, you have your different levels of things, and yeah, you just know that you need to spend a lot for Pinot Noir from Burgundy. But look for Burgundy or Bourgogne, that is going to tell you that it's Pinot Noir. You know, don't need to see anything else. Just like Bordeaux, just look for Bordeaux and you know it's going to be Merlot Cabernet or Sauvignon Semillon if it's a white. You know, that's what you're looking for. If you see, you know, as I said, Sancerre, Pouilly, Fume, that's going to be Sauvignon Blanc down in the Rhône. If you see the Rhône written on it, it's going to be Syrah or Grenache. If you see that if you see Burgundy or Bourgogne on a white, that's going to be Chardonnay. There is another great variety there, but don't worry about it. Alsace helps us out. They actually put the names of the varieties on there. If you don't see the varietal name, it tends to mean that it's a blend. So that's an easy way to navigate that. In Spain, the main variety they use for reds is Tempranillo. They will quite often put Tempranillo on there, but if they don't, this says Rioja, or that's Tempranillo dominant, and normally with some sort of Grenache or some other local variety in there. In Ribera del Duero, which is just a little bit north of Rioja, they tend to use a little bit of Merlot and Cabernet in there. So slightly different blend, but very similar wines. La Mancha, there's again another region, or Terra de Castilla, and again it's Tempranillo or Grenache dominant, but very, very similar wines to each other. And it is a broad spectrum what I'm saying, because I'm trying to hurry through this. I don't want to be talking all night about this because it is a lot to take in. Italy, as I said, Piedmonte is Nebbiolo and Barbera, and you see Piedmont and you see Barolo, Barbaresco, that's Nebbiolo. You will see Barbera written on the other labels, and you just know that it's going to be lighter if you like. I mean, Nebbiolo has a lot of tannin, a lot of acidity, needs time, but they are Pinot Noir like. Valpolicella on the eastern side of Italy tends to be, produce a wine similar to Pinot Noir in their Classico range, and then it gets deeper, richer, more port-like as you go through the grades to Amarone, which, yeah, something to bear in mind. Chianti is Sangiovese, and this is obviously one of the more famous reeds from Italy, and it's very much like a Merlot or Cabernet, especially once you get sort of to the Reserva level, they get a bit bigger, where the basic Chianti can be sort of a light Syrah / Pinot Noir. But yeah, and the other one to not be confused with is there is the town of Montepulciano in Tuscany. They actually make Sangiovese, so it tastes like Chianti as opposed to Montepulciano di Abruzzo. So it needs to have di Abruzzo. That means it's the grape variety Montepulciano from Abruzzo. And this is very much like your Merlot. You know, if you like Merlot, if you're a Merlot drinker, you'll love Montepulciano. And yeah, just know that it has to say Abruzzo. If it says Nobili di Montepulciano, it is Sangiovese and more acidity, a little bit more tart, not as ripe and easy drinking. And then as you move further south, you got Nero d'Avola from Sicily, which is the main grape variety. And it's big and jammy and ripe. Same with the other stuff in the heel, in Puglia, the Salento, the Negro Amaro, and the Primitivo. Primitivo is Zinfandel, for those of you who know Californian Zinfandel, is the same grape variety, very similar in style, maybe not as ripe and full as your Californian, but still same grape variety. So that's sort of the basics of that area, where they are more about the place as opposed to all the style of wine, as opposed to the grape variety that we more commonly associate wines by. Because in New Zealand, we read labels and we read it, or we go in looking for a wine, we look for a Sauvignon Blanc, then we look for the region, then we look for the producer. It's a little bit different in Europe. They look more for the region or the style, then they'll look for the producer. They don't care about the grape variety because they either already know or they just don't care because they know that they like Chianti or they like Burgundy. They don't know that it's actually Sangiovese or Pinot Noir. It's not what their care is. Where in New Zealand, we care about what the grape variety is, and that's the big fundamental difference. And that's the thing. When you know a little bit like that, you don't have to be as scared. Obviously, there's a whole world of other things that you need to know, and we will get into that in the future. In future episodes, we'll talk about, how to really break down finding decent wines in different places and what have you through Europe, so that if you're over there and you're wanting to drink something, although my advice to everybody is just go to a restaurant and find the house wine, because it's not like Kiwi house wine, where I don't know how it is in Australia or America, where the house wine is the cheapest, nastiest wine that the restaurant can get their hands on to make as much money as they possibly can. Instead, in Europe, the places that I visited anyway don't tend to do that, because they're cheap anyway. The wines, they're not expensive, so the wines are delicious at that price point. Anyway, that's a sidebar. After the break, we're going to have our wine of the week and then we'll wrap things up. Okay, now for the wine of the week. This is one, again, that I've tried a while back. I actually had a clip for it, but I've lost it. So I've had to, re-record a little note to add to the podcast. Now, the Chuchu Pacino Bacchus red from the Marche in Italy is our red. I will have a picture there very soon, if not already. This is a red from the Marche in Italy, which is sort of in the middle on the west coast, and on the east coast, sorry, not the west coast. Yeah, so anyway, it's a blend of Montepulciano and Sangiovese, so very much taking the two most popular red varieties from Italy as far as Kiwis are concerned and putting them together. Really good result too. So dark ruby red with some purple highlights, quite saturated, reading from my notes, and so quite deep and saturated the colour, so suggests that it's going to have some big concentration and power. The nose, a little bit different. It suggests red fruits, so red cherries, red berries, so raspberries, so sort of crushed raspberries, a little bit of spice, adding a little bit of complexity, and those red florals. So very different from the colour as far as what I was expecting. I thought there'd be a little bit more darker fruits. On the palate was weighty, fleshy, big fruit, lovely, rich, sort of powdery tannins. That spice continued, lovely weight and power, but there was that freshness too. So very, I actually made a comment that it's very Côte de Rhône like in the fact that you get those plump, juicy red fruits, but you do get that acidity and that tannin that just cleans things up and freshens the palate and gives it a moreish flow. So you want to drink more. And yeah, lovely wine, lovely carry, lovely flow to the wine. Really easy to drink, and it's equally at home. Obviously, red meats are the perfect pairing, but equally at home with braised meats and lamb, and even just charcuterie and pasta, and things like this. Tomato sort of rich, deep, mushroomy, sort of earthy flavor will work really well with this. It's to me, it's quite a versatile wine. As far as the score, I gave this a 94 out of 100. I really enjoyed this wine. I think it was excellent and really good value too. So, from memory, looking at it at the time, it was about that mid-late 20s mark. So very, very well priced, and really we're sourcing. I'm not sure where you would find it. Obviously, check out socials for my little brief tasting note on this, and it'll have the full, brief clip on this, and it'll have my tasting notes attached to it, so that will have the full name, so you'll be able to find it by that name. So yeah, a bit of a long-winded episode, but again, don't get so wrapped up in trying to make sure that you're drinking the right wine or you're having the right experience, or people are looking at you and thinking, oh yeah, you're not drinking XYZ. Who cares? Who cares that you're not drinking Central Otago Pinot Noir? As a personal thing of mine, I feel like a lot of people that drink Central Otago Pinot Noir would prefer to drink Australian Shiraz, but it's not cool to drink Australian Shiraz. So they spend money and drink Central Otago Pinot and want it to taste like Aussie Shiraz. So they want ripe, punchy, full-bodied fruit, and they don't really want a Pinot Noir. And so, yeah, be that person that's like, oh, I'm not going to drink Pinot Noir and spend this much money. I'm going to have this Gamay, or I'm going to have this Barbera, which at Lionel's you can buy either, or Cabernet Franc, which is delicious, and you're not paying the same amount of money for it. You're paying a reasonable price and getting very reasonable wine. Not saying that Central Otago Pinot isn't reasonable. It just, you don't have to follow the trends. You don't have to drink what everybody else is drinking to have a really good wine, to have a really good experience. I mean, even Pinot Noir, you can just buy it from Marlborough or Martinborough and it's still delicious. So yeah, just, be prepared to just step outside the box a little bit. But if you have, if you follow what I said in the episode, and I will endeavour to try and get some show notes on this episode so you can see, what I was talking about, the little cheat code, if you like, so you can, take a photo of it and go, okay, yeah, next time I go here, I'm going to be looking for this, this, and this, and try it and see how it goes, because you'll probably go, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then you've just tried another wine, and then you can tick that off and go, yeah, I've tried that style of wine, or I tried that. And then once you've sort of done the broad overview, then we'll break down some more, and you can try, you can go through the different villages of Bordeaux, if you like, or what have you, whoever, so just things that yeah, I would like to hear that you're doing, that you're trying these things, you're experimenting a little bit more and really trying to grow yourself as a wine drinker and just having some fun. So yeah, until next time, thank you as always for joining us. Sante. Bye.